I've gotten a lot of comments this season to watch Mushoku Tensei, and I finally got around to catching up. An episode before the season finishes, though, which is pretty sad.
It's not raining.
Yes, it is.
And it's pretty great. It's been a while since I've watched an isekai other than, of course, Re:Zero, which has had a second season airing in parts over the last year or so. And Mushoku Tensei really did not disappoint. If anything, I think that it exceeded any and all expectations I had. And it's probably now one of my actual favorite isekai anime for a number of reasons. While it plays on many of the typical isekai tropes, of course, it brings in a lot of new traits that keep it fresh. The main character is pervy in a pretty funny way. Each character has their own flaws and parts of themselves to improve, but most of all, the thing I enjoy most is the way that Mushoku Tensei creates a conflict between the main character's real self, the one from before they were transported to this fantasy world, and their new self. The way that it isn't really a fresh start for him, but instead simply new circumstances that allow him to overcome his previous trauma and hopefully become the best version of himself that he can be. So, join me today as I talk about Mushoku Tensei and the isekai genre, and why it's so enjoyable. Also, 95% of my viewers this month aren't subbed yet, so, if you could hit that button, that'd be pretty sick. Let's go! In Mushoku Tensei, our main character starts off as a 30-something-year-old guy, but no ordinary guy. He's actually a hikikomori, which is a term used in Japan for people who totally avoid any kind of social contact. And while this could just be something that the person willingly decides to do, a lot of hikikomori in Japan becomes so out of some kind of previous trauma or anxiety that makes social contact very difficult. If you haven't watched Welcome to the NHK, it's not just a great anime, but very educational on the kind of life hikikomoris live and the challenges surrounding it. But anyway, our main character is a hikikomori out of a previous trauma, which I won't really detail just to keep things generally spoiler-free, but he's also kind of a degenerate on top of that. And through a series of events, he gets hit by a truck and then transported to a whole new fantasy world. Or rather, reincarnated is a better word, as a newborn child named Rudius. And we see Rudius grow up with the mind of a full-grown man inside the body of a child, leading him to be able to learn languages and arithmetic and magic, yes, magic, rather quickly. He's a prodigy. And so we follow him as he grows up and, makes a whole new life in this new world. One that is certainly far better than the one he had before. And that's where my synopsis ends and the analysis begins. I'll begin with my favorite part about Mushoku Tensei, which is the contrast between Rudius's former self and current self. This is certainly the most unique part about Mushoku Tensei to me, since most isekais simply keep the main character the same, and even if they change the character's appearance a little bit, to begin them completely anew with a new life as a baby is really fresh. And as he grows up, only physically I guess, you see how people look down on children and hide things from them from an outside perspective, from Rudius's eyes. Rudius sees all of this as he grows up, and it honestly feels like the most realistic isekai I've ever watched. Which is, of course, an oxymoron to say that an isekai, which is inherently a fantasy world, is realistic. But even though magic and things like that exist, I feel like every single problem we see Rudius deal with, or the people around him, is relatable. Adultery, manipulation, bullying, needing money for college, racism. It's all of humanity's real problems mixed into a fantasy world. It's not overly fantastical or unbelievable. And this kind of down-to-earth atmosphere is assisted by you, seeing Rudius grow up, witnessing a life inside this flawed world instead of just throwing in a character at a random point. And speaking of Rudius, we also see how he must finally overcome the issues from his past in this new world. His inability to go outside, or his fear, rather. His troubles with even the most simple socializing with new people. It's not something he can solve with magic or by being a little boy genius, so it's all just very intriguing. With everything he gains, a new body, new skills as a prodigy, he still can't overcome certain things that he had before, and that's what he has to deal with. But Rudeus is also just a really good guy, and he has this profound impact on many of the people he meets. Not just because he's like decades older than any of them mentally, including his own parents, but because his experience in the real world, our world, has taught him things that are foreign and good for this new place he's in. And as an added plus, Rudeus is just really funny. Honestly, he's pretty perverted as a 30-plus-year-old degenerate dude, so he gets up to some pretty hilarious antics as he uses his status as a kid to kind of brush it off. He's also got the same voice actor, I'm pretty sure, as Gintoki from Gintama, which might explain why the voice actor's delivery is just so on point throughout the show. And if you watched my ecchi video a couple days ago, Mushoku Tensei actually follows what I was saying about modern day ecchi shows. How tying ecchi into a comedy or other bigger genre like fantasy is the new norm instead of just ecchi alone. I don't really know how that relates to the topic at hand, I just thought it was a cool connection. Watch my other video. Subscribe. And of course, the action and isekai part of Mushoku Tensei as a whole is also great, of course. It's kind of a given. The animation has certain weak points, but it also has really, really strong points during action sequences or important scenes that quite excellently encapture the beauty and fantastical nature of magic in this isekai world. We see beast people and demons and kings and queens, everything you would hope for plus a little bit of life lessons from the man-child Rudeus. I mean, this guy is single-handedly stopping like divorce, racism, and political meltdown all at once, while also trying to get with these like fantasy girls. It's the best of both worlds, really. And he's like 12? So, yeah, I really don't know how he's doing it. But, long story short, watch Mushoku Tensei. It's at episode 10 out of 11 right now, and I really recommend it. It grabs me from the start, one of the only shows this season to really do it, and it's just full of great characters, writing, humor, and isekai at its best. As always, this has been the Anime Culture Corner. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future in-depth show, manga, and character analyses.